Thank you all for being here. My name is Ryan Honey. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Campus at Willits. We are the 501c3 non-for-profit that runs the Temporary. We are thrilled to be hosting BTalks. We'll be hosting this one and several others in the future. Out of all the programming that we do here, one of my favorite things is to see our community come together, and so it's a real joy to see us come together to hear our own. We bring a lot of artists here, and we bring a lot of folks from around the country here, and it's nice to just celebrate our own stories from our own community. So thank you guys all for being here and being a part of this. And if you have a story you want to tell in the future, please come talk to me or talk to Missy or talk to Jackie. There's lots of us who are working on putting more of these together, and we want to share more stories from our community. That's what this is all about. So I want to say thank you to a couple of folks before we get started. I want to say thank you to the Basalt Chamber of Commerce, who really does all the heavy lifting on this. They have a great team over there that's very energized and doing some great work, and they are putting all this together, so thank you to them. I want to say thank you to, yes, indeed, give it up. Yeah. I want to acknowledge U.S. Bank, who's one of our sponsors for the BTalk series, which you may have noticed here. We're very subtle with our sponsorships. We want to thank U.S. Bank for making this possible, for allowing us to offer free drinks and free food and just to be together. So thank you to them. And thank you to Shaw Construction, who is also one of our sponsors. They're a great team at Shaw. They actually helped us build this space. So I owe them a debt of gratitude personally, and they're a sponsor of this. And I also just want to thank Jackie Whitsitt. Where's Jackie? There she is. She doesn't take credit, but she has been a huge driving force behind this, so thank you, and well done, and keep up the good work. Okay, well, tonight we are here to celebrate inspiring women, and there are many in this room. I love you, baby. And got a little teary. Mother's Day is coming up, so inspiring women, and it's such an important day to celebrate. I'm like crying up here. Hang on a second. To all the great women in our community, here, and tonight we're going to celebrate three of them. So the first is a friend that I want to introduce. Katie Hohn-Wiltgen is the Director of Education and Community Programming at the Aspen Music Festival and School. In this role, she oversees all AMFS programming for local children, including the popular in-school and after-school afterworks programs of Beginning Strings, of which many people here are members, right, kiddos? Yes. They just did a fabulous concert up at Harris Hall, so congratulations to our local kids who are playing in that. Other programs include lead guitar and maroon bel canto children's chorus, and all summer programming for kids and families. Katie is originally from Salina, Ohio. She earned a bachelor's of music degree in vocal performance and music education from Miami University and a master's of music in conducting and education from Colorado State University. She spent 8 years as the director of choirs and bands at Basalt High School and Middle School. Any of her former students here? Yeah, there we go. Throwing my paper around. That's so fun. It all comes back around. That's great. And she and her husband, John, are the proud parents of two kids, 7-year-old Leela and 4-year-old Kurt. So, Katie, come on up here and we'll hear from you. There you are.
Hey, thanks for being here tonight, everybody. I am Katie Hohn-Wiltgen, and as Ryan said, I'm the Director of Education and Community Programming at the Aspen Music Festival and School. And as he also said, before that I was the band director and choir director at Basalt Middle School and High School. And I also taught, it's a great thing. I taught music theory and spring musical and student council and drama and all of it. So then it was a really great thing. I loved it. But music education is kind of what I do. It's kind of who I am. It's like what I read about for fun on a Thursday night, as my husband and my kids will attest. And so I love music. I love education. I love kids. And I feel really fortunate that I get to do this through the Aspen Music Festival and School and offer programming to kids all over the Valley. So I run programming in about 26 different schools. We have about 600 kids that participate in our programming over the course of the school year, and they are in weekly classes. So those programs that Ryan mentioned, Beginning Strings, Lead Guitar, and Maroon Bel Canto Children's Chorus, those are weekly programs that run throughout the whole school year. And so tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our kids in those programs. I feel like the stories that I can most tell are the stories of the kids that do our programming, the kids that have gone through these kinds of things and have had, really impactful moments through music. And so I want to just introduce you to some of those kids tonight. So within our Beginning Strings program, we are at 8 different schools, and it's a beginning violin, viola, and cello program for 1st grade through 5th grade, and then beyond into middle school. So we take kids who have 0 experience in music, we put an instrument in their hand, or we help them get an instrument, and we've developed an entire curriculum that they then use over the course of the school year. So a couple years ago, we had this kid. I'm going to call him Hector. It's not his real name. Hector was in kindergarten, and his older sister was in beginning strings, and she was in 4th grade. And she was an awesome student, really, really great kid. Everybody loved her. Hector was not. Nobody liked Hector. Hector was a bit of a pain in class, and everybody knew it at the school. But he was a real cute kid, and so his sister, being in beginning strings, went to class every day on Tuesdays after school for an hour and a half, and Hector would come along because he didn't really have anywhere else to go. And Mom couldn't get there to pick him up until 5 o'clock, so Hector just came to class and kind of sat in the back. And we noticed that Hector started out not really paying attention to what was happening in class at all. He was doing his own thing, he was playing outside, he was on the playground and in and out and back and forth. But before long, we'd see Hector pretending to have a violin or pretending to have a cello. And he's kind of pretending to be a part of the class. And so we watched this kid, and we saw that he was really into it, and we saw that it might be something that he liked. And we started asking him, what do you like about what you hear? What do you like about what you see? What are you going to play when you're bigger? Now, beginning strings doesn't start until 1st grade, and he was a kindergartner. And he was a kindergartner with a not awesome reputation already, so not really somebody that you would be like, yes, I want to make an exception for this child. But we decided that Hector maybe really needed this. He needed music in his life. And so we took a Kleenex box and we made it into a paper violin. And we strung it up with some rubber bands and some string, and we put this thing together for Hector, and we gave it to him, and the look on his face was like, this is for me. You're gonna trust me with this? And we said, we kinda trust you with that, a little. But the deal was this: if Hector could take his paper violin home and take care of it for a week and bring it back to class the next week and show us that he could handle taking care of this paper Kleenex box violin, that we'd then get him a real instrument. And he came back the next week and he had painted it. He painted his violin. He had some little designs on it. Part of it was camouflage. There was something that was supposed to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle something. I'm not sure what it was, but it was real cute. And he was super excited. And so then we got him a violin. You know where the story is going, right? Hector ended up being a fantastic little student. He ended up being somebody who was fully engaged in the program. He loved it. His teachers saw a change in him. His teachers came to us and said, I'm not sure what's going on with Hector, but all he wants to do is play violin, so we're letting him do that at recess, because then he doesn't get in fights. And so that was great. Hector now has been in the program for, let's see, he's done 4 years in the program. And our program is set up that it goes from green circle, our beginners, to blue square, our intermediates, to black diamond, our advanced, to double black diamond, our chamber music, very advanced students. And so some of our kids down here started out as green circles this year and made it to blue square in 1 school year, which is a big deal. Congratulations, Niala and Livia and Leela. Anybody else beginning strings? And we have some of our beginning strings teachers over here, too. So Hector was a kid that didn't really believe in himself already by age 5. He already had been told, you're not smart, you're not good, you're not successful, you don't know how to behave in class, this probably isn't gonna work. He was 5, you guys. That's so punishing for a child, right? If you go into your elementary school experience believing that that is your fate, that that is the only expectation that you're gonna live up to, hey Cole, then where else do you go? How can you possibly rise beyond and above that? And so through music, he was able to really find a way to become successful and become proud of himself. And so it's one of those success stories that I think back on all the time, and I think about our programming and realize exactly what it is that it can do. So another one of our programs that we run after school is lead guitar. Lead guitar is a classical guitar curriculum designed by Brad Richter, who's based at the University of Arizona. And we've been running this program for quite a while. It was tiny for a long time, and now it's in 8 different schools as both in-school and after-school curriculum. And so this is the same kind of deal. It takes kids from playing nothing, reading no music, puts a guitar in their hands, and creates really proficient musicians out of them. It starts in 4th grade in most schools. We do have one school that's starting now in 3rd grade as well. So my story about lead guitar is another Basalt kid. His name is Christian. And Christian has long graduated from Basalt High School, but he came to us in 5th grade at Basalt Middle School, and he had just moved here from El Salvador. And he spoke a little bit of English, but not much, and he didn't read very much, and he didn't write very much, and he was a real quiet kid, and he got in fights a lot because he didn't really know how to communicate. And they put him in my band class. This is when I was the band director at Basalt Middle School. Cool, put him in my band class. We started him on clarinet, and it kind of worked. And then we discovered that he seemed to really identify with low notes. And so we put him on bass clarinet. And he loved that. And then he started playing some tenor saxophone and some bari saxophone. And communication was hard with Christian during class. Communication was hard with Christian from his peers. And what we discovered was Christian had a really bad hearing issue, and it had been undiagnosed his entire life. Nobody had really figured this out. But when he played bass clarinet, or tenor sax, or bari sax, he could feel it. He felt that vibration. He felt that resonance. And so our decision was, what can we give Christian that will help him connect with an instrument as much as possible? And one of the things that we discovered that he could really connect with was guitar. It's an instrument that is almost leaning against your body. It's balancing on your legs. It's a very physical connection. Christian started playing guitar in 6th grade. He continued in band as well. And within a couple of years, Christian had become so good at guitar that he would play in the hallways and kids would come to him. He became the one who would go play to the girls to ask them to go to prom because somebody else in the school had hired him to do so. So here's a kid who went from being able to not communicate almost at all in any way, shape, or form to communicating through music, through his guitar in such a powerful way that it became his identity. And that was a really cool thing. My last story I'll talk about is a girl named Maya. And Maya is in, I'm going to cry a little bit. Maya is in Maroon Bel Canto Children's Chorus. Maroon Bel Canto Children's Chorus is a children's choir that I founded with Katie Sansoni, right over there, who's the associate dean now at the music festival. We have about 200 kids valley-wide that sing in that choir. We're in 10 different schools from Aspen to Newcastle, and we bring them together 4 times a year to sing in Harris Concert Hall because we think that they have the capability to be really fantastic and professional, just like all those professionals that perform on stage in Harris Hall, and they ought to have a really fantastic place to perform. So Maya started in Maroon Bel Canto when she was in 4th grade. She's now a freshman at Basalt High School. And I remember her telling me in 4th grade, well, I like to sing, but I'm not very good. And I like music, but I'm not good enough for classical music. She just didn't think she had it. She didn't think she was good enough because she saw people up on a pedestal. Maya succeeded in Maroon Bel Canto in such a way that she ended up singing solos. She ended up being a section leader. She's now a section leader within her choir at Basalt High School. She's also playing flute, and she plays guitar. And she decided 2 weeks ago that she thinks she wants to be in music education. And so she's starting to figure out how that path can happen to get her into being a music educator. So here's a kid who had no confidence in herself, didn't think she had it, didn't think she was good enough. Other people, they could do it, but not Maya. And through 4 or 5 years of being in children's choir and playing guitar and being in band, she now is so confident that she wants to give that to other people, and that's really powerful. So none of these things could happen, though, without really strong teachers. And I know that I've been a teacher. You're going to hear from Tisha, who's a teacher. You're going to hear from Marlene, who is a guidance counselor and educator. All of this happens because these students have been inspired and motivated and drawn into it by someone who saw something in them, either that they already had some skill or that they really needed this in their life. And that's such an amazing thing. And so this is Teacher Appreciation Week, as you all know. I'm sure there's someone in your life that made a real difference. And so So reach out to that person if they're still here, if they're close, even if they're not close, even if you haven't spoken to them in 25 years. Reach out to that person and tell them what it is that they meant to you, because I think that's such a powerful thing that we can do to give back to those who gave so much to us. Thanks. So I think I'm supposed to take questions and give some answers. If anyone has any of those, I'd be happy to do so. Do you have strings programs for retired people? So we have had some adults be in our strings and our guitar class. It's something we actually really love because like extra help with classroom management and supervision, yeah, we'll totally take that. And so we actually scholarship people into our program, so that they can participate along with those kids. Adults typically, as you all know, tend to progress at a much faster rate than the kids do, and so they end up being assistants within the class in a really short period of time. So if anybody's interested in learning violin, viola, cello, or classical guitar, or singing in a children's choir, well, I'm sure we could make that work too. Yeah, we could definitely talk. I have cards and some flyers afterwards. Yeah. So he just asked, are most of the students that you've described first generation? And yes, they all are. They are all first generation. So prospects for them to go on in music education post-secondary was the question. Definitely those prospects are there. Whether it's a music major or not as a music major isn't super important to us. Like, it's fantastic that Maya wants to go on and be a music educator. That's not my goal as the director of education at the music festival. I'm not trying to create the next Joshua Bell. That's not what I'm doing here with these kids. But I am, however, trying to create the next generation of concert goers for the music festival, the next generation of music appreciators, and the next generation of kids who have some kind of connection to the arts. If that's something that you can instill in kids when they're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, they're much more likely to continue doing it in their 30s, 40s, 70s, 80s, whatever it is. If you try to drag them into it when they're 24, it might not be quite as successful. So one thing we've found through this programming at the music festival is that our demographics within our audiences have changed dramatically. When I first started at the festival and people would say, oh, you work at the music festival, that's so cool, I love Labor Day Fest. No, that's Jazz Aspen Snowmass, totally different organization. And now what I hear all the time is, oh, you work at the music festival, that's so cool. My neighbor down the street plays viola in beginning strings, and we just went to Harris Concert Hall to hear her play. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know that was there, and this is so great. And so it's somehow connected the music festival to the local community in a way that just wasn't totally there before. So a kind of unintended consequence, but a very, very positive one. Yeah. That's a really good question. So he's asking about the method of teaching that we use within the programs. Beginning Strings, we have created our own curriculum, and it's a combination of a couple of different things, part of which is Suzuki. And so this program, the curriculum that we've designed is kind of specifically for our demographic. It's for what we know the kids have had in general music class through their elementary schools, or what we know that they're getting in that class, and then we kind of build off of that. Our Beginning Strings program also includes, this is really cool, includes a series of private lessons. And so every one of the kids in the program gets a minimum of 7 private lessons with a dedicated teacher. So we have Megan and Jalen and Daniel that are right over here. Those are 3 of our Beginning Strings teachers. And they work with those kids throughout the whole school year, because we know classwork is great and playing in a class in an ensemble is really fun, but then also getting to be in a dedicated private lesson that's just for you is the way kids really progress. And so our tuition for the program is $275 for the whole school year, but we scholarship about 60% of our students, and about 85% of our students have instrument scholarships, and so we just give them an instrument to use, and when they grow, we give them a bigger one. So, anything else? Sure, so the correlation between music and other successes in life. Oh man, I just did a whole speech on this at Aspen Country Day, like in, I don't know, a year ago, something like that. So huge correlations. You've probably heard about the Mozart effect. It's not true. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. But it was really popular at its time, and it got people thinking about it. But what is true is kind of this two different sides of the coin. There's the instrumental and the intrinsic. And so some people say you should do music because it helps math scores, because it helps reading scores, it helps reading fluency. A lot of times if you have a kid who has a hard time tracking in reading, if you have someone with who deals with dyslexia, reading music is something that can really help because it's linear by nature. And so it helps them to develop stronger tracking skills. So we know it helps reading, we know it helps math. Music is essentially math, and it's a strong connection that way. There's the obvious connections with things like social studies and foreign languages and history in general, that kind of stuff. And some people say that that's why you should study music, is because it helps all those other things. And then there's the other argument of you should study music because it's really important within its own. It's not because it helps other stuff. It's important because it's powerful in who we are, in our beings. And there's such a focus right now on whole child education, which I think is so important, that for so long we've been forced to look so much at test scores, and that's fine. I know that politicians are, really pushing the accountability test score piece, but the whole child education is such a much huger part of what's going to be important as they go forward into college and then into the workplace. One thing that we're all really fortunate to have in the Basalt schools is a focus on the mindset, growth mindset. And if you've ever read any growth mindset stuff, it's all about developing a sense of grit and tenacity, so that kids say, and I hear this all the time, like at Basalt Middle School, oh, I'm not good at that yet because I haven't practiced it very much. It's not, I'm not good at that yet, or I can't do that. It's, I haven't experienced that enough to be good at that yet. And so it's something that the Basalt schools really pioneered in this valley. We had a teacher at Basalt High School, Craig Machek, who was kind of Basalt Middle School, who was the growth mindset expert. And it's something we pushed a lot, and it's something we hear a lot. It's something I discuss with my own kids a lot. But it's that value of hard work and appreciating what it is that comes next. And that's something that music does so naturally. You're not gonna be good at cello the first time you pick it up. In fact, it sounds like crap. I can tell you that because my kid's been playing it all year. Like, it's not pleasant at first, but with a lot of work and a lot of practice, all of a sudden you're making leaps and bounds, and it sounds really good, and it's a really noticeable, tangible improvement for kids, which is very important for kids. It has to be something noticeable and tangible. So there's that part of music that personally I think is even more important, but the academic side of it is huge. There's some great research being done out of UCLA about music, and out of Northwestern about the power of music in the mind and learning, and how it actually affects cognitive development in kids. And I can talk about that with you for hours, but it won't be tonight. So, yeah, Tiffany. Don't rosin the bow. That's really impactful. That's cool. Thanks. Kathy? Anything else? Cool. Thanks so much, you guys. I'd love to be in here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. We are so blessed in this valley to have people like Katie making sure that our kids get great access to the arts, and there's nothing more important than building the next generation of artists and audiences, so thank you, Katie. I'm going to throw a curveball to Marlene, because Marlene, you're going to go next. Keeping her on her toes. Our next speaker is Marlene Manown. She was born and raised in Michigan. Come on up, you can stand up here with me. She graduated with a teaching degree in math and later earned a master's in secondary school counseling. She moved to Colorado in 1963. She became the first female instructor for Colorado Outward Bound. Yeah. Hardcore.
No, not really.
She's been in Colorado ever since. She was a counselor in Basalt and Glenwood Springs high schools in the 80s and 90s, but has since retired. She has served on committees and boards for nonprofits. She is currently on the board for River Bridge, which provides critical support to child abuse victims. So give it up to Marlene.
Thank you. Oh, let me take a deep breath here. You got this. I got it. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start tonight with just a few tidbits about my childhood because it's going to have an effect on you seeing the overall story and message I have to give. So I was raised in a family of four in a suburb of Detroit, 4 children, in a suburb of Detroit, automobile center of the universe back then. And as a high schooler, the best thing to do was to hop in a car and go cruising through the drive-ins and wave at your friends and whatever. So fast forward from that little tidbit to between my junior and senior year of college, which I was also in Michigan for, and I had the opportunity to travel out west. And a 24-hour segment of that travel happened to be in Denver to visit a cousin who was living here and teaching at the time. And while I visited her, she took me up to, on a short drive through the foothills of the mountains outside of Denver. Well, that sent me back to college with this determination that I was moving to Colorado whenever I graduated from college. Fast forward one more time to, I'm now age 26, and I see on the faculty bulletin board a poster for an Outward Bound course for teachers. And it was going to be the first ever teacher's practicum in the late 60s, and I decided I wanted to do that, even though I was not very experienced in the outdoors at that point. So those little tidbits, just put them aside for a minute. I'm going to tell you 2 short tales, and we'll come back to that. My first tale is a bear story. So my husband and I are on a 6-week canoeing trip up in Boundary Waters canoe area, and we're about a week and a half into this trip, and we have a wonderful campsite, had supper, go to bed. And it wasn't very long after I fell asleep that I am awakened, and I look over about 20 yards from us, and there is, sure enough, a black bear over there pawing at my backpack. So I wake my husband, and we were told by the Forest Service to clang pots, right? This bear could care less about clanging pots. So we're back to square one again, and the bear casually walks around, goes behind some bushes behind our tent. Eventually, over several minutes, he resurfaces right in front of our tent where we are sleeping, and we are looking at this massive bundle of fur. And at that point, I remember, again, when we stopped at the Forest Service before we embarked on this trip, that I asked them, and what if the clanging pots don't work? They said, you talk assertively, but not aggressively to that bear. I forgot to ask for an example. So what came out of my mouth was, don't laugh. Mr. Bear, Would you please go away and leave us alone? We don't want you here. At which point, this bear's massive head turns and looks at us in the tent and goes, "Rah!" I mean, we saw the whole open mouth bit. Needless to say, my eyes were this big and my heart was about to leap out of my chest. But lo and behold, he left. He put his head back down, sauntered away, and we didn't wait very long. We couldn't see him anymore, but who knows where he was. And we leaped out of that tent, picked up the tent, sleeping bags and everything, put it on the canoe, and did a houseboat trip out to the nearest island. Safe. Eventually, we went back to sleep. However, the next morning, end of story, we returned to the campsite to get the rest of the gear we hadn't thrown on the canoe. And the bear had returned to camp, had clawed out the bottom of our food bag that was hanging up in a tree, and eaten everything except some dry noodles, some coffee, that's important, and some flour. So we had the decision to make: do we go paddle back a week and a half to get resupplied so we can paddle a week and a half back and proceed? And after some deliberation, we decided it was the height of berry season in Minnesota, yum, and we were fishermen. So we paddled on, had a successful rest of the trip, although nighttime often had some unsettling worries associated with it. My second story is I had an opportunity to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And this was in the early 80s. By this time, I had climbed most of the 14ers here in Colorado, and it sounded like a wonderful opportunity. So off I go. My friend and her husband were at the time constructing a new medical clinic in a village out on the west coast of Kenya. So I flew into Nairobi, took an overnight train out to this village, and arrived mid-afternoon in horrendous heat. That wasn't the worst of the problems. It was my first opportunity to travel in a third world country, and I was just wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. And I didn't know. I was the minority. There were two of us who were white in this village at this point in time. And I was so relieved when it was time to go to bed and the heat was gone and I could just unwind and get rid of jet lag and whatever. However, wasn't very long. I don't know how much time. I was awakened by this distant sound of drums, just a steady beat of drums. And I get myself quite worked up about these drums because I had heard that a couple white missionaries had been killed a few months before I arrived, and I got myself in quite a tizzy about my endangerment. And so I wake up my friend who happens to have the name Gruffy. I say, "Gruffy, will you listen to this? I hear drums, blah, blah, blah." She says, "Marlene, it's not to be worried about. There are always drums in the night around here from the neighboring villages. Go to sleep." Okay. So I go back to sleep, only to be wakened again. And this time I see this weird flashing light. But I can't see the actual light. I just see the reflection of this light. And I still hear the drums. So I try to calm myself down. That doesn't work. I'm Gruffy. Now I see this flashing light, and I can't figure out what it is. And she says, "I don't know what that would be." So she gets up out of the tent, goes over, comes back with a grin on her face, and she said, "The night watchman for the construction site had climbed into the truck to sleep and had bumped the turn indicator. I go to sleep, Marlene. Okay, all right. And I'm thinking, oh, and I'm so exhausted, as any of you have traveled know how that goes. So only to be awakened a third time. And this time I hear this noise that is just, I can't even mimic it for you. It's some animalistic yowl, yipe, huge roar kind of thing. Graffy! What? I said, "Ugh." I listened, and fortunately for me, right then, this animal did this again. She goes, Marlene, that's just the hippopotamus coming out of Lake Victoria. They do this every night. They're not going to come up here. You're okay. Go to sleep. I went, I collapsed. But that night, once it was ended, wasn't to be the hardest or most meaningful, I guess, challenge for me on that trip, because the next day, due to some delays and problems with the construction at the clinic, Gruffy had to tell me she wasn't going to be able to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with me. So now I'm confronted with the decision, shaky as I am, can I proceed to climb Mount Kilimanjaro by myself without her company? And bottom line was, I had paid so much airfare to get there, I decided I had to at least try it. So back to Nairobi on the train, and I get on a bus down to Arusha, Tanzania, and I'm the only white person on that bus. A perfectly wonderful ride, as it turns out, and a successful climb of Mount Kilimanjaro. So that too had a good ending. But I tell these two stories and overlay them with the kind of background I came from that was not outdoors and was not adventurous. And I find myself at now age 76, quoting to people often the last stanza of Robert Frost's poem about two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And it has for me, but my more general message is that I think we all need reminders periodically to put our necks out there, that our lives are only what we make them to be, and that to engineer those lives we are blessed with for now, we need to be willing to take risks. They don't have to be physical like mine have been, but I think that's what builds the essence for us about these lives we're in. Thank you. Are there any questions? Back there.
I would like to go back to your outward bound career because I am personally acquainted with no fewer than 8, whose lives were, some of them utterly changed and some of them enhanced in ways that they never would have known by their experiences with outward bound. Do you have a personal memoir of someone whose life you
So many is right. So I worked for them for 18 years after my first experience as a teacher-student. And it by far was the most formative time in my life, and it is what diverged the two roads. Two really short stories come to my mind. One was I had a stewardess, an airline stewardess, who flew in internationally as a student on one of my courses. And she so part of an Outward Bound course in those days was a 3-day solo, 3 nights, totally alone, mostly no food, blah, blah, blah. And she had the most difficult time with that solo of anybody. And I, in talking to her to get her to go back out on solo, I said to her, why is that? You're alone a lot in foreign cities all over the world, and what is that about? And she said, it's because I can lock the door. So that was the fear she was dealing with. And the other story there's so many of these that have to do with the rock climbing, rappelling ahas we all have when we have a chance to do that. But this one man who was a student of mine on a teacher's practicum came from Tennessee. He said night one, when we were talking about expectations for the next month of our various challenges and endeavors, he said he's terrified of heights and terrified, of course, of the upcoming rock climbing and rappelling. So fast forward to rock climbing day initiation, and we get we go through all the basics. He does just fine. We get on a rock face, and he just freezes. The Outward Bound schematic, or whatever you would call it, is so beautiful, the way it works with people, where there's the group dynamic and all these people who want each other to be successful as we go, which is, I think, is so similar to the music program. And so he eventually, I won't go into much detail about the rock climb, but then it was time to rappel. And he started off 3 different times and just panicked and would lunge forward and let go of his safety rope. But of course we had a backup safety rope. And finally, this man was able, I mean, inch by inch by inch, I think it took him an hour maybe to just get over the lip, but he did. And at the end of the course, they get to do an expedition that is of their choice, and he chose rock climbing as his final challenge for 3 days to do rock climbing and rappelling. It's wonderful to see him progress through that. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Brian.
I told you guys, hardcore, right? Hardcore. The good news is if we have any other spilled drinks, we have a crack team of elementary school kids who are prepared and ready to clean it up for you. So spill away. Our last speaker tonight is Leticia Guzman Ingram, and she's currently a teacher of the English language, of ELD, English Language Development, and Film as Literature at Basalt High School. Now, if you think you have a good resume, just wait. So in 2016, Leticia was selected Colorado Teacher of the Year by the Colorado Department of Education. She's also the recipient, yeah, right there, 2016 Teacher of the Year. Amazing. Amazing. But there's more, so much more. It's really quite impressive. She was the recipient of the Virginia French Allen Award for Excellence in Teaching and was selected ELD Teacher of the Year. Don't worry, that's just the crack team doing their work. They're just doing their work. It's the temporaries crack team. The interns get younger and younger. Leticia was awarded an educational scholarship that included a visit to Finland to study their educational system. And in partnership with the United States State Department and the Embassy of Hague, she facilitated a workshop at Edith Stein College, and she is now considered an ambassador of United States education. But wait, there's more. As a member of the Aspen Institute's National Commission on Social, Emotional, and Academic Development, she has presented numerous times that includes a session before a congressional briefing on education, Congress, and a session at the Aspen Ideas Festival. During the summer of 2017, she participated in the NEA Global Fellowship Program that included a visit to China, where she gained firsthand knowledge of their educational program. And she recently was named a mover and shaker by the Roaring Fork Lifestyle magazine.
One of the things I wanted to do tonight was first tell you that I don't think education is in Basalt High School in those 4 walls of classroom. It's all about going out into the community. And so tonight I really want to brag about this community because I think it's the best community we have in the whole United States. I really do. And I brag about Basalt, Colorado all over. I've talked about Basalt, Colorado, and the cool things that are happening in this place. And for you that just moved here, you're going to love it here. Because it is awesome. I've raised 4 kids here. They all graduated from Basalt High School, and I've just loved raising my kids here. So one of the things I want to brag about is this Thanksgiving dinner that we have every year at Basalt High School. And the way it started was I was talking to some of my kids. So I teach newcomers. They just arrive in the country, mostly from Central America. And they come here, and I realized that none of them had ever been, or the majority of them, had never been to a museum, a zoo, or they didn't even know what maroon bells was. And they had never camped. And so I realized is I need to help them build that background knowledge. And that's what that first commercial was about. And so I thought, I'm going to go talk and raise the money because I have 80 kids, and I want to take them all to Denver. And so I thought, I can do this because I knew this community would be behind me. And I went to the Aspen thrift store, ladies, and talked about my kids. And they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the demographics is so vastly different from Aspen High School to Basalt High School, you know? And they were shocked. And they said, of course, we'll help you do that, but we want to know more stories about these kids. So I started telling the story about my kids. And it was close to Thanksgiving. And they said, I was telling them how I was talking to my kids earlier that day, and I had asked them what they were doing for Thanksgiving vacation. Now remember, Thanksgiving is an American tradition, so you know, we take it, we presume, oh, it's, you know, everybody knows what Thanksgiving is, but it's, you know, everyone doesn't if you're not from the United States. So they were saying, we're all working, and I'm like, you're gonna work? What about turkey, cranberry sauce, dressing? They had never tasted that. So I was telling these ladies, so they said, you know what, we should put on a Thanksgiving dinner for them. And I'm like, okay, I'm all for it. And so they did that. They decided they would cook, and they came down to the high school, and we put on this beautiful Thanksgiving dinner for them. So that first year, there was about 50 people that came, and they dressed up. And remember, they're new to the country, and so it's really hard. They don't know the language, and they don't have that safe sense of belonging yet. And so they were shy, but they came. In fact, I think our first speaker is sitting right here. Edgar Rojo was one of our first speakers. He's actually the first Latino to graduate from Basalt High School. Yeah. Edgar, raise your hand. Raise your hand. That was our first speaker at our Thanksgiving dinner, or second year. I can't remember one of those. And you did a great job, by the way. Anyway, so we ended up, the next year, they were like, how can we do it better? So I was like, well, you know what? We can go door to door. So some of my students went with me, and some of my teachers went with me. We knocked door to door, 80 houses, and the Aspen Thrift Store ladies gave us cookies for every house, and we invited them to the Thanksgiving dinner. So that year, we got like 175 people to come. So it was like growing. Well, then the community, you guys, started hearing about it and said, the Roaring Fork Club called and said, hey, we want to cook for you. So the chefs still cook to this day. They cooked 21 turkeys this year. You know, they came and did it, and there's actually one of the chefs was one of my students too. She's graduated, Keely Roberts, and now she cooked for us this year. It was really cool. So anyway, then the Bethel Party Rental says, we'll give you a discount. City Market says, we'll donate food. This is our community, guys. I have to brag about you. Our community is amazing. People started calling. The architects down the street came and started measuring to make sure there's enough room for people to walk through to go to this awesome Thanksgiving dinner. Our National Honor Society Student Council said, we want to be waitresses and waiters, and started serving. And this, today, last Thanksgiving dinner, there was close to 400 people there. And Aspen Times did a great job saying Thanksgiving feast at Basalt bridges cultural divide. And I believe it is an amazing place where people get to know each other. And it doesn't matter what country you come from or what color your skin is. We're all the same. If you cut yourself, our blood's the same color. And I think that's the beauty of our community is we're all here, like Katie said. We want everyone to feel safe and that we respect each other, and it doesn't matter where you come from. The next cool thing, and this is, I'm hoping the video works because this is really a great video. The Basalt Art Base called me up and said, hey, we realize that people that come to our classes, we don't have anybody from your newcomer class or for that demographic. So we want to open our art base to you. So can we partner up together and invite you guys to come take lessons? And I said, sure. So let's see if the video works. If it doesn't work, I'll talk about it. Work. Oh, I heard something.
Okay, I'm Leticia Ingram, and I'm an English language development teacher at Basalt High School. I work with newcomers, so students that first come into the country and are new to Basalt, and they come to my class 3 hours a day, every day, and we learn English. And one of the ways I love to teach English is through community projects. So I was very excited when the Art Base called and said, we'd love to do some project with your students. And so they started, we started coming over here for classes, and one of the artists, Ajax, is working with them, and she studied in Columbia Spanish, and so she works in English and Spanish with them, and they're creating their homes, and they're designing their homes and putting them up, and they just talk about, while they're doing their projects, they talk about how it was hard to leave their country and the homes that they left behind, but their new homes that they've created here. And this project's so cool because a lot of these kids have never walked into an art museum, and they know nothing about art, so they're learning about art. They're also feeling really comfortable with the art base here. They've never been in it before. So now, it's been a month already that they've been working here, and when they first started, they were so quiet. And now, if you come by the art base, you're going to hear El Salvadorian music playing outside, and they're talking to everyone. They're talking more and more English, we've noticed, to the people that work here. And so it's really created a bridge between the cultures, and it's just exciting to see how excited they are. We had one new girl today that just came to our school. In fact, it's her second day, and she saw what was happening. She's like, can I make my house from El Salvador? And we were like, yeah, jump in. So she just jumped in, and it's just fun to see that. And now, the art base, we were all talking about it, the people that work here, and we were saying, oh, you know, now they're comfortable to come take classes here, where before they would have never walked into this building. So it's exciting to see that. So what happened?
So that is something cool that just started, and we're hoping to do it every year, and it's really, really amazing. So I was bragging about a couple things happening in our community, but I wanted to share 2 stories about 2 students of mine that have been huge in changing my life, and I'm probably going to get emotional. So one person, his name's Wilmer, and he changed my perception of the way I look at a student. And so one day, I remember him coming to my class, and he's here tonight, so I can't look at him. So I remember coming to my class, and he was young, and he was really shy, and he didn't talk much. And he would come every day with a smile at 8 in the morning. And I remember he would come, and I don't think he's ever heard me tell this story, but he didn't know any English, and I didn't know anything about him, but I did know that he worked really hard in class. But he started falling behind, and he didn't ever really turn in his homework. And so I started getting frustrated because he wasn't turning on his homework, and sometimes he would be sleepy and fall asleep sometimes, and I didn't understand that. And some of the other teachers talked to me about him too, and they were saying, you know what, you got to do something about Wilmer. He's really sweet, but I don't think he's going to graduate the way he's going because he's not doing his homework. And so I thought, okay, I need to do something. So I'm going to go find his mom. And so I went to go to his house, and I found his house. And when I got there, I knocked on the door, and I had this whole lecture ready to tell his mom about what we needed to do with Wilmer. And as soon as I opened the door, thank goodness she talked first before I said one thing. And I'm ashamed to say that I had this lecture ready for him. She said, "Oh my gosh, you're Mrs. Ingram. I've heard so much about you. You make my son feel so special, and he loves going to class." And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't say anything. I was feeling really ashamed of myself. And she said, come in. And she set me down and she hugged me. And then I'm thinking, where is Wilmer? Is he playing video games somewhere? Is he at soccer? Because he wasn't around. And so I said, Siri, my perception was really wrong of this student of mine. I said, where is Wilmer? And she said, you don't know? And I said, no, what? And she said, Wilmer, after school, he comes home and he grabs something to eat, and he catches a bus, and he goes to Aspen, and he works till 2 in the morning scrubbing carpets at one of the local hotels. And he does this every day. And I said, really? And I felt so ashamed of my perception of this kid who I thought was one of the laziest kids in school, but instead he was one of the hardest working students I had ever known before. And I was very ashamed. And I went back to school and I told his story to the other teachers, and everyone's perception changed. Our whole lens changed at the way we looked at our students. And so I found out more about his story, about how his father had passed away when he was 5, and his mother came to the United States. At 7 years, she was gone in the United States while he stayed with a relative. And when he was old enough, he came alone because he knew that he had a better opportunity here in the United States to finish his education. And so he was working really hard to do that. And so instead of giving him homework, we gave him lunch work. We let him sleep at times, and it was okay. And we were his biggest cheerleader. And so 2 years later, this is what happened. He graduated from Basalt High School, and I was so thankful because if it hadn't been for Wilmer, my perception wouldn't have changed, and I wouldn't have started listening to the stories. And so Wilmer is here tonight. He's right here. Amazing person. He works full-time, and his dream is to become an architect. And I know that if he does, if he really sets his mind, and that's what he wants to do, he will. And he's doing awesome right now today. So one of my biggest inspirations. So thank you, Wilmer. My other student that I would love to share the story is, her name's Karina, and she taught me about weaving a tapestry. Is how we are all different colors of thread, and how when we work together, we make this beautiful rug and picture. And Karina is that person that really taught me that. And she said to me, I remember when she came to the school, she was in my American history class, and I remember writing everything down on the board, and I saw her, and she was copying everything on the board, but she didn't understand it because she's just learning English. And I asked her, what are you going to do? She said, I'm going to go home and translate it. She says, I work, and then I get home, and I translate it. Sometimes till 1 in the morning, she would translate it. Can you imagine your child doing that? I don't know. This is one of my kids. Would you do that? It's like, I just was in shock of these kids. They work, and then they go to school, and then they work, and then they go home and translate this to learn that drive, that determination. And she was amazing, and she ended up going to a different class because she was learning so fast. And she would tell me her hopes and dreams were to be in the health system, maybe a nurse, She also loved to write poetry, and so I just loved hearing her dreams. Now I started listening to people's stories because of Wilmer. I started really listening to people's stories, and I started being her cheerleader too. Well, lo and behold, she ended up nominating me for Teacher of the Year. So I want you to hear her story.
So at 10:30 this morning, our school has a community meeting where the whole school comes together and we make announcements and regroup as a school. The University of Phoenix presented all of the Teachers of the Year this great gift to give a full tuition scholarship to a student. And the first person I thought of was Karina Rivas. It's gonna change her life. And she has no clue about it.
She's currently working 2 jobs and also volunteering in her community and wanting to still go to college.
She's just the hardest worker I've ever met.
When you see that and you read about it, that's the person you know who's deserving of a scholarship.
She came to our school a couple years ago from El Salvador. El Salvador is one of the #1 hotspots for violence and gangs.
We didn't have the money, the opportunities. I couldn't go to the university in my country.
And University of Phoenix said, you know what? We want to pay it forward. Karina Rivas, will you come up?
This is my dream. It's true. This is an awesome opportunity for me. I want to try to help people here in the community.
I want to thank you, and I want to give this gift of this full tuition scholarship to you today.
I love you. I'm proud of you. I can do it. And you can do it too.
So Karina just made the dean's list, finished her 2nd year in health, and she's here tonight. So, and she's working at Valley View Hospital. So these are my inspirations, and just think, this is our community, you know, and it's beautiful. And I love this quote, and this is what my kids have taught me, is to listen to stories and that we're all connected together. So, thank you. Yeah, do you have any questions?
Everyone's crying.
I tell you, these kids at our high school are amazing, and there's so many stories. So there's a couple of, I had a teacher in 7th grade. I was really shy, and he pushed me out of my box. He told me to run for student council, and I ended up doing that, and he believed in me. That was one of it, but also my grandmother, when my mom was little, they had moved to a new neighborhood, and she couldn't go to school across the street because of the color of her skin, and she had to be bused an hour away, and my grandmother had only been to 6th grade only, and she didn't speak very good English. She went and talked to the superintendent and said her daughter was very smart and he should give her a chance. Well, she didn't expect anything to happen, but lo and behold, he let my mother in. And so that I thought about later in life when I did become a teacher, and I always say it's my 2nd life that I became a public school teacher. I thought about that story, and I said, I want to be like my grandmother. I want to hear the voices of my students like she heard my mom's voice, and I want to be a champion like she was. And that's what I try and do now. Any other questions? I agree.
Wonderful. And we're so lucky to have that. struggle with that test. I've taken it. And, well, just because
You guys have taken it.
but it's a tough test. And when I took that test, I noticed other Hispanic kids getting finished with the test very quickly. And I started to wonder why that was. And so I asked a couple of them. And they said they had trouble with. Anyway, that's my question.
No, it's a good question. What happens is it depends when you come, how much English you've had. So some people could come when they're 17 and they're just learning the language. And it depends too on how fast they learn. But I think you could answer that question better. Did you take the accuplacer? Yeah. So go ahead and tell them. Was it hard?
It was really hard, but
It wasn't just me.
no, I don't think so. It was really hard because I took it 1 year. I came 4 years ago, and I took it in 2015 when I had 1 year here. So it was really, really hard. And I took it again the year after, and I was better. So I think I did a great job, but it was hard.
Yeah. I know Wilmer took it too, so it's a tough one, but they did it. They're amazing.
I just have to say, last fall, Karina's husband Ivan was in the Basalt Citizens Police Academy with us, and he was just more fun than a barrel full of monkeys. And Ivan is going to police school now, so he finished the academy.
Yeah, this is Ivan. And by the
I wanted to put a shout out to him, but he and Karina came to our home at the dinner for the police academy, and we had the best time. And I felt like I found a kindred spirit with Karina. She's looking at all of my books, just saying, wow, wow, wow. And we were talking movies and books, and we have so much in common. And I just, I thank God for the opportunity to know these two, because they are outstanding, stunning, incredible people. Yay.
and today is Ivan's birthday, by the way. Yes?
So, I don't know if this is the elephant in the room, but when you come here as an immigrant, what are your prospects? And you've had the support and love of the community, you've had the support and love of your local education. Now what?
Well, of course, you hear Karina's story that she is in school now, and she might want to talk some more. She's in school and finished 2 years. And do you want to tell them what you're doing right now?
Okay. I'm a volunteer at the Valley View Hospital, and I work for a church in Carbondale, helping the newcomers too, and to the people who cannot speak English, to help them. I'm not fluent as I want in English, but I try to help them. And I'm taking classes too. I'm busy every day, the 7 days. But my aspiration is to help the people, the newcomers, to be part of the community, to work here, to have the same opportunities as you guys, because we love this country.
Really, my question was more about a wider federal and political stance. How can we help you become permanent members of our community and our country?
Do you want to say something? Hey, Wilmer's too shy to talk. So I keep giving it to Karina. Do you want to say anything? No. Okay, go ahead, Karina. How can you help?
Well, in immigration reforms, it's kind of difficult because that's nationwide. But I think voting for presidents and everything is a good way to do it. And I know the president that we have right now is probably not the best one we ever have.
Really?
I know, right? But believe me, I moved to Colorado 2 years ago. I used to live in Maryland, East Coast. And I know, right? And believe me, East Coast is way different than here, immigration system and everything. Even the police officers on here, they help those immigrants. Like because where I met Missy in the police, the Citizen Police Academy, one of the first things they say is that don't be afraid. Like, we won't ask questions if you are immigrant or not. If you want to come, just come. And that was the reason why I started going to college. I'm in CNC right now, studying for a criminal justice. So one of my goals is become a police officer because they inspire me to be like them, to help others, to help those in need. So for your question, I think the only thing to do is like really, really be careful when you're going to vote for the president. I mean, don't take me wrong. I'm not saying that you vote for him. But yeah, I think that's the only way we can change something, like getting together and vote. That's for sure. And thank you, guys. This is a great community.
That's a great answer. I think get educated on just everything that's happening, you know, and also get involved like this. I'm not, for example, I'm not the expert. The reason that all these opportunities have happened is because of the community reaching out and saying, I want to be a part, I want to help. And so, and like Ivan said, is really get educated and make sure you know who you're voting for. So.
Leticia, I've noticed on occasion that you have a drum circle in the community space at the high school. Can you speak about that and how that helps? You know, we heard about music and how it helps, but how it helps the students that you work with.
So I'm always, if anyone calls me and says they want to do something, I'm saying yes. So I got a call. I won't turn anyone down. So I got a call, and someone said, I want to give your newcomers drumming lessons. So I'm like, okay, come on down. So he came, Eric, he's from Carbondale, and he came and worked with them for 6 weeks. And John was there when they performed. How'd they do? Amazing. And they can't, like my kids, I got 4 kids brand new to the country in the last 10 days. So they're coming and they don't speak any English, but the drumming, you don't have to speak English, you know? And it made them feel like I can do something that no one else in the school can. And it made them feel important and get more respect for themselves because it's hard. I mean, just think if you moved to a country where you couldn't talk at all these people are trying to talk and you're trying to learn as fast as you can and it's overwhelming, and it just made them feel so special. They were in front of 450 kids and they did this amazing drumming session. So, any more questions? Oh, other.
I've known Tisha for a long time, and one of the things I always liked about her, I actually have always been impressed, because I've never heard her say, it won't work or I can't do it. Never.
Thank you, appreciate it. Well, you guys are amazing, thank you.
Thank you. This is our community, and we are lucky to live in it. So thank you to all of our speakers. Again, thank you to the Basalt Chamber, to our sponsors. And I want to leave tonight just with a challenge to each one of us here in this room. You heard from remarkable people here tonight sharing their stories, and they were supported by great institutions. They were supported, obviously, the school system, Outward Bound, the music festival. You heard about the art base. We heard about CMC. There's so many great institutions in this valley doing great work, and I challenge each and every one of us to support them with their time or with their money or with their energy, because that's what makes this community great. So thanks for being a part of it.